The hum of the ship's engines was a constant companion in the sterile, dimly lit corridors of the Council cruiser. As it cut through the vast expanse of interstellar space, carrying its precious cargo to the Citadel at the center of the galaxy, Ambassador Ethan Albright stared out of the observation port, his face reflected in the glass. The stars seemed distant, insignificant even, as his mind churned with the task ahead. The negotiations had already gone on far longer than anyone had anticipated, and now this final summit was meant to seal the deal. Earth's future in the Galactic Council depended on it. Albright's team had prepared for this moment with meticulous care. The Federation had a reputation to uphold, after all. Humanity had clawed its way through the cosmos, reaching the stars in a mere fraction of time compared to many of the ancient civilizations of the galaxy. Now they had to prove that they belonged, not only in power, but in spirit. The Vothran representatives are already in orbit around Solus Prime, Lieutenant Kira Noor, Albright's tactical officer, reported as she entered the observation room. Her tone was tight, but Albright could tell it wasn't just professional anxiety. There was something more personal in her voice, something that reflected the growing tension. "I'm told the Zelriths are still in transit, but their shuttle is scheduled to arrive within the hour." Albright nodded absently. The Vothran, the insectoid race from the southern quadrant of the galaxy, were among the more powerful members of the Galactic Council, a constant presence at every summit. Their decision to back or oppose a treaty could make or break any deal. The Zelriths, a race of ethereal beings with vast telepathic abilities, were less politically active but still important, with their voice often holding significant sway in neutral situations. "How are the humans on the surface?" Albright asked, shifting his attention from the stars back to the lieutenant. "Impatient. Frustrated. The usual," Kira answered. "The news of the talks has everyone on edge. It's a fine line to walk, Ambassador. Some are eager for peace, but others are deeply distrustful of the Council's motives. And the withdrawal? It's caused a ripple effect." Albright sighed. He knew the feeling well. The entire Federation had been caught in a whirlwind of emotion since the public announcement. To some, it was a bold move, showing that humanity wouldn't bow to galactic politics. To others, it was an act of profound recklessness. "We'll know soon enough if it was the right decision," he muttered. Just then, the cruiser's comm system buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. A holographic message from the Citadel flashed on the nearby screen, and Albright's stomach tightened as the familiar face of Chancellor Veldrith appeared. The Zelrith was a tall, semi-unconscious being with an aura that shimmered faintly. His voice was calm, resonating with a soothing timbre, yet the deep concern behind his eyes was unmistakable. "Ambassador Albright, it is good to see you. I trust your journey was uneventful." Veldrith's voice was gentle, but there was no mistaking the undercurrent of worry. "The journey was fine, Chancellor, but as you know, it's not the journey that concerns us now." Albright replied, his voice even. Veldrith's gaze turned serious, and he stepped closer to the holographic transmission, his long, graceful hands folding into a meditative pose. "The Council is preparing for a tense summit. Many are uneasy with the Federation's decision to walk away from the table. There is talk of rebellion within the ranks, but there are also those who understand why you've done it. The true question remains, what do you want from this?" Albright's eyes narrowed. "We want a future where we are not shackled by bureaucracy and endless negotiations. Humanity is not here to be a pawn in galactic chess. We've earned our place at this table, but we will not sacrifice our values for the sake of unity. If you cannot respect our autonomy, then the Council has no value to us." A moment of silence hung in the air as Veldrith took in the words. The Zelrith's transparent form shimmered slightly as he processed the message. I will do what I can to mediate, but I cannot promise that the Vothran, or the Galdrek, or the other factions will accept such a drastic shift. We have long relied on your contributions, Ambassador. You represent the future of the Council. I just hope this does not lead to regrettable consequences. Albright stared at the Chancellor's face, unable to mask the frustration that had been simmering beneath his composed exterior. There's nothing to mediate, Chancellor. The humans of the Federation have made their decision. There's no going back. The transmission ended, leaving a haunting silence behind. The ship continued its journey, and the crew resumed their duties. The tension was thick, a palpable force inside the ship. Albright turned away from the observation port, his mind already shifting gears. The summit was only a few hours away. The summit begins. The Citadel loomed ahead, a sprawling complex of glowing spires suspended in space. It was a marvel of alien technology, an ancient relic from a bygone age, meticulously maintained, and still the hub of galactic diplomacy. As Albright's shuttle docked, he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been decided here, in this very hall, and today they would either reaffirm their commitment or take a step into the unknown. He disembarked, stepping into the vast main chamber where the leaders of the Galactic Council were already assembling. The walls were adorned with holographic images of the galaxy, stars, planets, systems, all mapped out in great detail, their importance highlighted by subtle pulsations of light. The Vothran delegation had already arrived, towering and imposing, their mandibles clicking rhythmically in a language only their own kind could understand. Albright walked past them, unfazed by their intimidating presence. He had faced the Vothran in countless negotiations before. He knew how to stand his ground. The Zelriths arrived shortly after, their translucent forms floating serenely across the room, each movement seemingly in perfect harmony with the ambient energy of the Citadel. They were beings of intellect and deep thought, often taking days to come to a decision that others could make in a few hours. But their wisdom was unparalleled, and in the eyes of many, their opinion held significant weight. Albright made his way to the center of the room where the representatives of the Federation would take their seats. As he moved, he could feel the eyes of countless species on him, some curious, others critical, but all expectant. There was no room for weakness now. "I never thought I'd see the day," Kira whispered beside him, her voice tight with nerves. "Neither did I," Albright replied, his gaze sweeping the room one final time. "But here we are." Moments later, the signal was given, and the council meeting began. Albright stepped up to the central dais, his team flanking him. The room fell silent, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, the weight of history seemed to hang in the balance. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," Albright began, his voice steady, though his insides were tight with anticipation. "We stand here today to address the future of the Federation and by extension the future of humanity in this galaxy. We are not here to beg for inclusion, nor are we here to grovel for your approval. We have proven our worth, and we will not sacrifice our independence for the sake of your unity." The Vothran representative, Commander Volax, was the first to respond, his mandibles clicking with impatience. "You speak of independence, Ambassador, but the galaxy does not exist in isolation. The Federation is too young, too volatile to make such a drastic move." "And yet it has become necessary," Albright said, his gaze unwavering. "We will not continue to be held back by bureaucracy and constant demands. Our people want progress, not political stagnation." The room buzzed with whispers. The other representatives exchanged looks, some curious, others hostile. The air was thick with tension, and it felt as though every word Albright spoke was a step further away from the very unity the Galactic Council had been built to foster. "Ambassador?" Veldrith interjected softly, his calm demeanor belying the tension that had grown between the humans and the rest of the Council. "Perhaps there is a middle ground, a way forward that respects the Federation's desire for autonomy while still maintaining the integrity of the Council." Albright looked at the Zelrith, his eyes narrowing. "There is no middle ground, not anymore." A long silence followed. The weight of his words hung in the air. The Galactic Council, for all its power, was facing an unprecedented crisis, and humanity was the catalyst. What came next would decide not only the future of the Federation but the future of the galaxy itself. Ambassador Ethan Albright watched the stars streak past the observation window as the Federation's cruiser hurtled through the void, making its way toward the Citadel. His mind was far from the beauty of the cosmos outside. He stared into the endless expanse, contemplating the weight of the decision he had made. Humanity had been a member of the Galactic Council for over a century, but today it would stand on the precipice of something far more uncertain. The Federation's withdrawal from the talks was not a decision made lightly. The entire galaxy had been on edge for weeks since the Federation's public announcement, a bold declaration of their independence from the bureaucracy of the Galactic Council. For many, it was an act of defiance, a repudiation of the Council's attempts to govern humanity's actions, control its resources, and manipulate its foreign policies. But for Ambassador Albright, the decision was about far more than political games or lofty ideals. It was about protecting humanity's future, ensuring that Earth and its colonies were not strangled by the political entanglements of a vast and complex galaxy. Humanity had risen to become a dominant force in the galaxy, and yet the Council had continually tried to box them in, force them into deals that undermined their autonomy. As the cruiser continued its journey toward the Citadel, Albright allowed his mind to wander back to the conversation he had had with his team just before departure. "Are you sure about this, Ambassador?" Kier Narar, his tactical officer, had asked. "Once we step away, there's no going back. The Council won't take kindly to our withdrawal." "I'm sure," Albright had replied, though his own voice had shaken with uncertainty. "It's the only way forward. If the Council won't respect our autonomy, we walk. We can't keep negotiating our future away just to keep the peace." The words had felt heavy at the time, and they felt even heavier now as the cruiser neared the Citadel, the heart of galactic diplomacy. Albright stood up, his boots clicking softly on the metallic floor, and walked toward the comms terminal. "Kira, status report." Kira's voice crackled back through the intercom. "All systems are stable, Ambassador. The fleet will rendezvous with the Citadel within the hour. The other delegations are already arriving." "Good. Keep me updated," Albright said. He rubbed his temple, feeling the weight of the entire Federation's future pressing on him. His thoughts were interrupted as Lieutenant Kiera Nor entered the observation deck, her brow furrowed in concern. "Sir, I just received an encrypted message from the Vothran delegation. They're calling for an emergency council meeting upon our arrival." "An emergency meeting?" Albright raised an eyebrow. "For what purpose?" "They claim it's about the Federation's withdrawal," Kira said, her tone filled with disbelief. "They're already preparing their objections." Albright exhaled sharply. The Vothran, the galaxy's most powerful insectoid race, had always been staunch defenders of the Council's bureaucracy. They would never accept a move that threatened their carefully constructed order. "I expected as much," he muttered. "Get me the Chancellor, now." Kira nodded and quickly made the necessary arrangements. placing a call to the Citadel's central comm system. Within moments, the familiar face of Chancellor Veldrith appeared before them. The Zelrith diplomat, his transparent form shimmering with an ethereal light, looked more troubled than usual. "Ambassador Albright, your arrival is imminent," Veldrith said, his voice calm but tinged with unease. "I trust the journey has been uneventful?" "For now," Albright replied. "But I am sure that will change once we reach the Citadel. The Vothran are already preparing for a confrontation. I assume you've heard about our decision?" Veldrith's gaze darkened, and he folded his hands in a calm gesture. "Yes, I have. The Council is unsettled. There are factions that fear what this could mean for the stability of the galaxy. You are, after all, one of the most powerful members of our collective body." "I understand the concerns, Chancellor," Albright said, his voice firm. "But we can no longer ignore the growing dissatisfaction within our own ranks. Humanity needs autonomy, and we can't achieve that as long as the Council demands more from us than we're willing to give." Veldrith looked at him intently, his translucent form pulsing gently as though absorbing the weight of Albright's words. "I hope you understand the implications of your choice. The Vothran are already calling for sanctions. The Galdrek may follow suit. If we cannot reach a compromise, well, things could escalate quickly." Albright nodded. "I understand, but we're prepared. Humanity will not be forced back into submission." The transmission ended with a lingering silence. Albright stood there, his mind a swirl of possibilities, as the Citadel came into view. This was the beginning of something much larger than any one person or even any one species could control. Today, the Federation would either stand tall and fight for its sovereignty, or it would be swept back into the fold of galactic bureaucracy, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Chapter 2. The Confrontation. When the Federation delegation arrived at the Citadel, the atmosphere was unlike any Albright had experienced in his years of service. There was a palpable tension in the air. As he entered the vast assembly hall, he could feel the eyes of every representative on him, some filled with curiosity, others with distrust. The Vothran delegation, led by Commander Volax, stood in the far corner, their insectoid forms casting long shadows against the walls. The Galdrek, with their jagged crystalline exoskeletons, flanked them on either side. The Galdrek were known for their cunning, their manipulative strategies and diplomacy. Albright knew they would be difficult to persuade. At the center of the room, surrounded by the representatives of various races, Chancellor Veldrith stood as a beacon of calm amidst the growing storm. The Zeldrith's shimmering form was almost otherworldly, but even he could not mask the concern in his eyes. The meeting began, and Albright was first to speak. The weight of the Federation's decision was heavy on his shoulders as he stood before the Council, addressing the gathered representatives. "We stand here today not to beg for your approval, but to defend our right to govern ourselves," Albright began, his voice calm but resolute. "The Federation's withdrawal from the Council is not an impulsive act, but a necessary step for the survival of humanity. For too long, we've been treated as pawns in your political games. No more." He paused, letting the gravity of his words sink in. The room was silent, but he could feel the tension building. The Vothran delegation, predictably, was the first to react. "You speak of autonomy, Ambassador," Commander Volax's voice rang out, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "But your actions are reckless. This council has provided peace and stability to the galaxy for millennia. You would risk it all for the sake of pride?" Albright's gaze hardened. "What peace? What stability? All we've seen are endless debates and power plays, all while our people suffer the consequences. We will no longer be bound by your rules." The tension escalated as representatives from other species began to murmur among themselves. Some whispered in agreement, while others voiced their dissent. The Galdrek leader Raxka, a towering figure of crystal and shifting energy, spoke next. "Is this the path you choose, then, human? To turn your back on the very foundation of galactic unity? You are making a grave mistake." Albright met the Galdrek leader's gaze. "Perhaps, but it is a mistake I am willing to make for the future of humanity." Before the situation could spiral further, Chancellor Veldrith stepped forward, his presence calm and soothing. "Enough. This is not the time for escalation," he said. His voice carried the weight of authority, yet there was an undercurrent of weariness to it. "We must find a way to move forward, together." But Albright knew it was too late for compromises. Humanity's withdrawal was a signal, and no amount of diplomatic maneuvering could undo what had already been set in motion. The future was uncertain, and as the meeting adjourned, Albright knew that the Federation was entering a new phase in galactic history. Chapter 3: The Discovery. As the summit reached its conclusion, the tension in the room remained thick. But the real discovery was yet to come. Albright had barely returned to his quarters when Kira Noor entered, her expression more serious than usual. She handed him a datapad, her fingers trembling slightly. Sir, we've received something unexpected. A transmission. It's not from any known race, but it's coming from deep in the outer rim." Albright glanced at the datapad, his curiosity piqued. The transmission was encrypted, the source untraceable. It was strange, an anomaly. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low with suspicion. Kira paused. "It's a warning, a message of..." Kara paused. "It's a warning, a message of in greater peril than we thought." Albright's heart raced as he read the encrypted message. "The fabric of your galaxy is fragile. A force far older than your council stirs in the shadows. Humanity's path will determine the fate of all. Beware the whispers of the void." The message ended abruptly. No signature, no origin, just the warning. Albright's thoughts raced. "This isn't just a political threat," he murmured. "Something else is at play." Kira nodded grimly. "It appears the discovery of our independence has triggered something. We need to figure out who sent this, and why." For the first time in the long, tense hours since their withdrawal from the Galactic Council, Albright felt the full weight of the unknown pressing on him. The Federation's decision to walk away from the talks had ignited something deeper, something that could change everything. And it was clear that this discovery, the message, was only the beginning.